Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Double Tap on YouTube. I am Stephen Scott.
And I am Shaun Preece. Hello.
Hello. And today I thought we would talk about the Apple antitrust case that's been brought forward by the US Department of Justice, Shaun. We touched on it on Double Tap on the Daily Show recently. Yeah, but look, I know you're nervous about this, right? But no one's
This is legal stuff. I'm very. You say that now.
I have watched LA Law. So I am perfectly capable.
We are fine. Okay.
Absolutely. I've seen a couple of diagnosis murders as well, so we'll be absolutely fine. With us to discuss this, I thought, who do we get on? Who do we bring on to the show? To
legal expert.
Discuss it? Exactly. Which, and actually, ideally, someone who's American as well, right? And I thought, who else? But Michael Babcock. Welcome back on to the show, Michael Babcock.
So that means I was the only American they could find at last minute to come talk about this.
Absolutely
I am
not
a
the
legal
case.
Expert.
For the sake of legal reasons, we will say definitely not. But yeah, probably. Anyway, let's get into this. So you've obviously been following this case like everybody else. What's your take on the DOJ's case? Are you pro or against Apple on this one?
So here's the irony: is I really haven't been following this case, and I kind of am at the point where a lot of people have said this. I know you've said this. I know several other professionals have said this as well, and that is the DOJ just needs to wait until iOS 18 comes out, because a lot of these have already been addressed. So what is the point of this, aside from it's let's make a stand against big tech? Conveniently during an election year.
Well, I mean, you say you haven't followed it, but you've pretty much nailed it as far as I'm reading it. I mean, that seems to be I just think it's interesting from your perspective, because this is very much a US case in the way that the EU was fighting back against Apple and won. And some would say it was a good thing because we got USB-C out of it. Thank you, EU. If you don't thank them for anything else, you can thank them for that. But, it does seem like the US Department of Justice were emboldened by the case in the EU. That's the impression I get, and it kind of emboldened them to bring this forward. We should say this has been ongoing now, or at least been prepared for a number of years, and I guess it's maybe the time that it's taken to get this argument out that has perhaps been the problem here, because tech moves on so quickly, right?
Well, yeah, tech moves on quickly, and I don't know that we can blame the EU or thank the EU for USB-C, because it's not like Apple got the ruling from the EU last year and said, oh, we better switch our next iPhone to USB-C. That's obviously something that's been in the works for quite a while now. And so I think they kind of fell into the aspect that the US is falling into as well. Why not just wait a little bit? But how long is waiting a little bit worth? One of the things that's been brought up is the iMessaging aspect. And if you are an Apple user, then you get iMessaging. But if you switch to Android, then you don't get iMessaging. And I've never, it frustrates me being someone who goes back and forth between devices, iOS and Android, that a lot of my conversations can be broken. But I also get why I don't have iMessaging on Android or Windows, because those aren't Apple-owned products. That's like me saying, I want to use WhatsApp and call my son who doesn't have WhatsApp. So why isn't WhatsApp in trouble for you having to have WhatsApp on your phone in order to communicate with it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll firstly say, why hasn't he got WhatsApp? Because WhatsApp is absolutely everywhere. But I get that.
Well, I want to come back to that point. That's a really interesting point. We'll come back to that.
Super app. Kind of. Yeah. Okay. So look, when it comes down to iMessage, though, and your point about, the EU just didn't say, oh, we're looking at USB-C, and then suddenly Apple changed. Actually, I think they did. Because they knew it was coming. EU weren't quiet about this. Of course, there was that where they proposed the bill and then passed it and all that. But before that, it was known that this was coming, and this was a problem that they were highlighting. And I think it's exactly the same with the DOJ. I don't for one second believe that Apple were caught by surprise, like last week suddenly going, oh no, this is happening. I think they've known for the longest time why they've started to make moves into iMessage supporting the RCS, the Rich Communication Service Protocol.
Well, let's break this down a little bit, because it seems to me the argument is about SMS, not RCS. but SMS, which is
I love
the
jargon.
original. Yeah, exactly. But that was the original. That was the original text messaging protocol, right? And that's what is in place at the moment. And the issue seems to be that because Apple hasn't adopted this rich communication system, RCS, which would make the ability to send messages and pictures and emojis and all those things across between Apple and Android, because they haven't brought that in yet, that is something that they should be, well, it would appear taken to court over. But as you said, Michael, that's going to be fixed. And I've been saying this as well. It's going to be fixed in iOS 18. Now, there's another argument here, which is that apparently Apple are going to be using a 2019 version of RCS. So clearly someone hasn't paid their license fee for the updated version. Maybe Tim Cook could get his credit card out on that one and maybe just upgrade that. And then that could solve that issue. But it seems that even if and when this comes in with iOS 18, it's still not going to be perfect, and it might even result in a slightly lesser secure and lesser private messaging between Apple and Android. So in some ways, this ruling or this case might actually push more or create more problems than it solves or aims to solve.
Yeah, that's interesting, because when you're still in the Apple ecosystem, you have maybe you don't understand conceptually everything that's going on, but hey, my messages are secure between me and that person. But when you open it up to Android, it definitely can give you a little pause and say, hey, at least right now, when I send a message, it says text message when I'm sending to an Android user. It might say rich communication message or RCS message when iOS 18 comes out and the support comes out. But you do have those security challenges that might come into play when you're crossing over different platforms.
Now, Shaun, you mentioned WhatsApp. And
yes.
I was talking to someone today about this, and it was interesting because they had said to me, it's funny because in Europe, the UK and Europe and in other parts of the world, lots of people use WhatsApp. But in America, it's not that popular. So
Really?
It seems to be the most popular app of messaging choice on an iPhone for Americans is iMessage, not others. Now, I'm not saying that Americans aren't using WhatsApp, but the number of people, the total number of people using iMessage is much higher in the US using iPhones than it is outside of the US. And that's interesting. We are more prepared, it would seem, outside of America to be willing to try all these different apps out. Less so in the States. Now, Michael, I don't know if that's your experience.
Yep, it is. And the people that I am connected with that don't use WhatsApp, just use iMessages or the default messages app on their Android phone because it's right there. They don't have to go download something. It's perceived that it's a long sign-up process to set up an account. And then some individuals I've talked to said, well, what's the point? I already have messaging on my phone. I don't need to go get another app to message with people. I think what helps people with with wanting to use WhatsApp, at least in the US, from what I've observed, is I need to contact someone that my carrier is going to charge me an outrageous price to deliver that message to. And if I'm talking to people internationally, a lot of times I might just stick with iMessages, or if I want to send them voice messages, then I'm going to go into WhatsApp. But really it comes down to the cost of, if I'm just texting someone and it's here in the US, I'm just going to use the basic messaging service. If I need to contact someone outside the US, I'll try to see if they're on iMessages, and if they're not, then maybe I'll look at this WhatsApp or go to Facebook Messenger.
But why should they have to go to WhatsApp and not do it from iMessage? I mean, because there's no reason why there should be a charge for an iMessage sending an SMS. So the short message system, right? The SMS and the was it MMS as well?
Yeah.
Which was brought about for sending media via text message. So sending pictures, basically. So those two have been around for decades and decades, right? Mm-hmm. So they are being replaced with RCS, which is all of it into one, being able to send audio, video, pictures, and text messages, as we're so used to with apps such as iMessage and WhatsApp. So the fact of the matter is that Apple have so far chosen not to support this new protocol replacing SMS. Now, to talk about encryption and privacy, RCS supports encryption, except for the protocol or the version that Apple have chosen so far. So, again, it's a decision made by Apple to limit what functionality RCS has when it comes to communicating across platform. So this is all down to Apple. There isn't a case of...
Okay, I get that, but I'll concede some of that. But what I would also say is that the SMS system, which they are blaming the poor experience, the green bubble versus the blue bubble, essentially, that's the result for the consumer. That's not Apple's fault. They didn't design it. They didn't build it. They use it. They utilize it. So if they're getting blamed for a system which is not suitable, why would Apple be to blame for that?
Because SMS isn't up to the standard that we're so used to now with every other messaging app, not just iMessage. And the fact of the matter is that RCS has been made to offer those level of services, to offer high-definition photo transfer and video and audio. And the fact of the matter is that Apple are yet again choosing not to offer the same standard to other platforms. They're saying, OK, we will go to this protocol of RCS, but, you know, the video or photo quality isn't going to be great, and maybe there won't be an encryption. Why? There's no reason why they shouldn't have exactly the same feature set as everything else.
Unless you go back to Tim Cook's comment of, oh, well, the messages don't come through as clear, just buy an iPhone. And maybe that's the gotcha, is to get more people on iOS.
But of course, but again, look, this is what irritates me about this case to some degree. They're going after a company that would appear for building something good. Now, I mean, is this where we're at today? That here's a company that built something which actually works, that does well, which works within its own ecosystem correctly, which, you know, by nature is competing with other companies out there. And if other companies aren't able to keep up, why is that Apple's fault? I don't get it. I honestly don't get it. What am I missing here?
I think it comes down to legal professionals wanting access to information. And if everything was the way Apple was with their iMessaging right now, it's end-to-end encrypted. So if someone wanted to get the information from those messages, they can't interrupt that information. So they can't be, I guess, fully informed. There was a law, I forget where it was. One of the states here made it a fine. They added a fine to Meta because they were allowing minors under 13 to use encryption on their devices. And it comes down to wanting to have access to all the information. I don't know why the DOJ is bringing this up now, but I think that plays a bit into it.
And, you know, I don't mean to get too political here, because there's no way to avoid it. This is a political issue, and it's certainly going to become a political issue as we head up to the US election this year. But can the DOJ win approval here? I mean, I find it interesting because there's one difference, I think, between this case and the Microsoft case in the 90s, and that's the fan base that Apple has. It has a strong fan base, and I think there's even people who are not necessarily Apple fanboys or fangirls, but will absolutely be saying, you know what, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel correct. Now, of course, I will say there are plenty of people who'll be on the other side of that argument, and I get that. But there are plenty of people who are also not. And I think the fans of Apple here, I saw it referred to in the news as their stores were being referred to as houses of worship, which I thought was an interesting choice of phrase. But, you know, I think there is a difference here with the reaction of the public, and also the mood towards political leaders in our country right now, and especially in your country, Michael.
Mm. And is this going to stifle innovation for companies? Because it gives the appearance...
Don't get too big.
Yeah,
don't get too big, or the DOJ will come after you.
Yeah.
That's
stifle innovation. How many times have we heard that trotted out as to say, oh, no, you can't make us do that. It stifles our innovation. Oh, come on. Look, I actually think there's some points of this that don't make sense. There's some points of this that are out of date. There are some points of this that should just be totally laughed out, right? But I think in general, I think this is a good thing to hold big tech companies shine a spotlight on them, because the end user experience is all I worry about.
I'm shaking my head at you.
You shake your head, Audio Describe, man. Look, the point is, I want to send my iMessage from my Windows desktop. Why can't I do that?
Well, you can. You can use Phone Link on Microsoft.
Have you tried it? It's terrible, right?
That's not the argument. That's not the
question
argument.
Was, why can't I? You
Exactly. You can.
You can't. Yeah, but it's incredibly limited, right? You can't send photos or audio. You can't send video. Why not? This is all software limited.
Blame Microsoft. They built the app.
This is yes, but they're trying to work around limitations that Apple have built in. That's the point. And
Apple
it isn't.
Might say you can though, just buy a Mac, and then you can use that.
Just
Mac
buy a
because
Mac.
you're in their ecosystem, and should they have to be supportive of everyone else's ecosystem? Because if Microsoft makes a change, then if that's the case, Apple's responsible for making sure that works with the changes Microsoft made that maybe Apple wasn't aware of.
And let's remember how many times people have been able to use iTunes on a Windows machine because of the work that Apple did to make that available.
Which was awful experience, by the way.
But
Please,
again, it doesn't matter.
Make me.
The point is that these things are being made available. It just seems, I think you're right. I think the case, a lot of the information in the case is outdated. I think I would have thrown this out before we even got to this point where this case was brought forward. It feels like there is a case perhaps to be made around big tech and monopolies and competition and all of that. There definitely is a discussion to be had. I just don't think that they've brought the right case at the right time. I think if they brought this case 5 years earlier, they might have had a point. But I think they're too late. And it's interesting. I'm reading more and more people who are falling on that side of the argument. Now, there are many people, like I say, who don't agree with that. And I want to hear from you. If you're one of those people who say, Stephen, you're totally wrong on this.
You're totally wrong, Stephen.
But listen, don't come back at me with the classic, you're just an Apple fanboy. I'm not interested in that. That's not an argument. I've had those arguments by email already, and I'm not interested in them. That's not an argument.
Sorry.
Come and stop it, Shaun. Don't tell me that I'm a fanboy and therefore I'll just apologize for everything Apple does. Even people I'm seeing trying to bring in accessibility into this and saying, well, they don't allow for third-party screen readers. Well, to my understanding, they do. There's nobody stopping anyone creating a third-party screen reader for Apple. It's just no one has. So I'm sorry, we need to get our facts right here on this. We've got to get the case right here. And I don't think the DOJ have done this. And by the way, on the accessibility point, it's not in the case. It's not part of the complaints. It's not part of the discussion as far as I'm concerned.
And let me just make this point, because I've been sort of saying how I'm all for this and how Apple have restricted. I don't think this is just an Apple problem, by the way. I think Apple have been chosen as an example because so many other companies follow what Apple do. I think the exact same case could be brought against any company you can think of, to be honest. Yeah. Google, Amazon, Microsoft, whoever it may be. I think Apple have just been the unlucky ones to have been chosen first. But I think there is a case to be answered. I honestly do.
Final thoughts on this, Michael?
I want to use my Pixel Watch with my iPhone. Why can't I do that?
It's a great question. It's a great question.
Wait for the next case against Google.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Well, look, we watch with interest. It will not be the end of the discussion because this is probably going to go on for years, and I don't really know the benefit of it. I will say, though, if the DOJ want to fully understand the issue they're facing right now, or they think they're facing, just think back to that 1990s case against Microsoft, because the work they did on that case allowed Apple to flourish. Think on that. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Michael. As always, it's great to have you with us. Thank you for coming back on. You can check out, of course, your podcast, Unmute Presents, unmute.show. Is that right? That's your web address? Yeah.
Yep, unmute.show. It's kind of a tongue twister.
Yeah, well, it is actually, if I'm honest. Yeah, it is. Yeah, you could fix that. But anyway, thank you, and come back soon if you want to talk to us again. Email feedback at doubletaponair.com. You can, of course, call us on the phone. If you've got an Android phone, this might be your only way to connect with us, it would appear. 1-877-803-4567. Don't try texting it, though. I don't know if that works, actually. We should try that.
On WhatsApp?
We don't do WhatsApp, no, because we're all about...
we're in trouble. The DOJ will be in touch.
Move on. We'll be getting a DOJ case against us in a minute.
Let's go.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.